السكيورتي برنسبل هي تأمين سيف environment يلي هي بيئة سليمة وآمنة. الحقيقة الموضوع هذا موضوع شائك وطويل، وأنا كنت بحديث مع الإخوان قبل ما نبدأ الويبينار إنه أنا متحمس ومتحيز لإدارة الأمن لسيدات ورجال الأمن. من الناحية التالية طبعا the first question who has come to our mind is the difference between safety and security. To differentiate between both sectors, let me draw your attention for the essential differences. Safety is taking care of potential hazards that are being existing inside the hospital, while the security is protecting the hospital and the facility from outside hazards. So this is the main difference between both, but we have mutual concerns between each others. نتكلم نحن على الفرق بين إدارة السلامة والأمن، وتكلمنا إنه السيفتي أو إدارة السلامة هي تحمي المنشأة من أخطار كامنة داخل المستشفى، بينما إدارة الأمن تحمي المستشفى من أخطار خارجية. هذا لا يعني إنه منفصلين تماماً، في بعض الأمور المشتركة بين الطرفين. ونتكلم عن السكيورتي الحقيقة let's mention something. The security man or security lady, they are the first ambassador that patients and visitors will meet at the entrance of the hospital. دائما رجل الأمن وسيدة الأمن هم السفير الأول للمراجع والمريض على حد سواء بيقابلوهم على مدخل المستشفى. فبقدر ما بيكون رجل الأمن مجهز بالتدريب بالثقافة بالهندام، بقدر ما يعطي صورة جميلة على المنشأة. إنه نحمل مسؤولية كل شيء لرجل الأمن أو سيدات الأمن، هذا شيء غير طبيعي. إذا ما تقورن أو شاركنا مع السبورت من الليدرشيب سبورت من FMS سبورت وأعطينا الترست الكامل. So safety or security staff will not do their duty and responsibility as appropriate if we don't give them the proper support as a leadership support and FMS support. And let me please tell you about a small story happened in one of the hospitals that I was working in a few years before. We had a security lady, and of course I will not mention her name, and I was FMS director at that time. She met me in the morning and told me that she is issuing an OVR, electronic OVR, against nursing department. So when I asked her why, please explain the reason, she said, in the morning while I am coming, I have seen a nurse coming with her husband in the car, and she was carrying a dog. And when we entered together, went to the ward, she started and embarked her duty without sanitizing or washing her hands. And actually she is right. And I support her. Even the nursing department, they replied to OVR and act accordingly. أنا كنت بتكلم على موضوع إعطاء الثقة لرجال الأمن وسيدات الأمن. قصة حصلت معنا من كام سنة. إحدى سيادة الأمن كانت على درجة من المسؤولية والوضوح، فلاحظت أثناء دخولها المدخل الرئيسي إنه في إحدى الممرضات بوصلها السائق أو زوجها، وكانت تحمل كلب بين يديها، فتابعتها وطلعت معها للوورد. النرس بدأت شغلها وعملها دون ما تعقم يديها أو تغسل يديها. فسيدة الأمن عملت OVR، نموذج الحوادث بنسميه OVR، وحولنا للنيرسينج ديبارتمنت إدارة التمريض اللي أخذوا الإجراء المناسب، وكان هذا الحقيقة شيء يشكر عليه. بمجال آخر الحقيقة كان في أحد رجال الأمن كمان كان صاحب مسؤولية وعمل OVR وقدم تقرير ضد إدارة الصيانة. الحقيقة هي ما هي تعتبر ضد، لكن هي اللي كان المتسبب فيها إدارة الصيانة والإدارة الهندسية. رجل الأمن لاحظ في أحد غرف التنويم أو أحد أقسام التنويم إنه الأخ الدهان أو فن الدهان حط الثنر بقارورة مية وتركها على باب الغرفة، وكان في أطفال عم يتمشوا أو جايين مع أقربائهم، فكان في خوف إنه أحد الأطفال يستعمل قارورة المية هذه اللي فيها ثنر، وطبعا لا شك إنه كانت مسؤولية كبيرة وتم اتخاذ إجراء اللازم. I'm saying another example from a security department, one of our colleague and staff, security man, he noticed that the painter from utility management or maintenance management was using a thinner, and he put the thinner inside a water bottle, and it was very risky that someone, especially children, could find a bottle of water and drink it, and this bottle was left at the inpatient room entrance. However, I thank those kind of people. I consider them as unknown soldier, جنود مجهولين. And I urge you all as a top management to support security staff. Please give them the required support and trust them, because at the end, all of us will go to our home, and to sleep well, we have to be sure that our facility in safe hands. متى يجب التخطيط لأمن المنشأة؟ Actually, we should start preparation for security concerns from the planning session. From my humble experience, I will tell you something. If we are going to do a good planning, a good design, we should share the infection control and the security as well, because they have a different point of view of FMS directors or engineers or whatever. For instance, I have attached this plan showing ICU, drawing of ICU. And here, if you see the two arrow, red arrow, the location of security post or access control, because ICU should be secured accordingly. Of course, this distribution of doors will follow the fire zone. However, here we located a security post and access control just to show that security concerns are considered at the early phase of planning. Naturally, sorry, let's talk Arabic. نحن نحب نشارك الحقيقة كمهندسين الستاف أو الأطباء الانفكشن كنترول أو منسوبين مكافحة العدوى زائد منسوبي الأمن ببعض الأمور التخطيطية. وكمثال عليه حطينا مخطط حديث لأحد المستشفيات في منطقة العناية المركزة، أو فيها الأبواب اللي فيها أقفال أوتوماتيكية، وفيها بكون مكتب أو البوست تبع رجال الأمن بكون على طرفين، إما بيت الدرج أو بكون على المدخل الرئيسي من جانب المصاعد. شيء طبيعي أن نبدأ التحكم بأمن المستشفى من المواقف، لأنه المدخل الأول لدخول الزوار، دخول المرضى. امبارح الأستاذ عبد المحسن تكلم على موضوع مواقف السيارات وعدد مواقف السيارات مخصصة للهانديكاب لذوي الاحتياجات الخاصة أو بنسميهم أصحاب الهمم. وكان طبعا الحقيقة ملاحظة قيمة أخذناها من أصدقاء المشاركين. However, yesterday Mr. Mohsen has mentioned, as per MOMRA, the criteria for car parking. It was in hospitals, I'm talking, 2.2 parking slot for each bed, and 5% from all should be dedicated for handicapped. Why? I know this is not security concerns, it's engineering, but since we have mentioned it, let me show you the diagram or schematic, because the parking slot for handicapped dimensions is different from the regular one. The regular parking width is 2.60 while handicap parking slot is 3.60. دائما مواقف السيارات لأصحاب الهمم بتكون أعرض من مواقف السيارات النظامية أو العادية لباقي المراجعين. عرض السيارة أو عرض موقف السيارة بيكون 260 سنتيمتر، بينما مواقف السيارات لأصحاب الهمم بتكون 360. مجرد الشيء بالشيء يذكر، فحبينا نذكر هالمعلومة هذه لإخواننا في إدارة الأمن. خلينا نرجع للمعايير سباهي اللي هو FMS 11. The hospital environment is secure for patients, visitors and staff. عند شيء طبيعي نبدأ بالتعريف، بهويات التعريف بكل من موظفي المستشفى، الموظفين المؤقتين أو المتطوعين أو المقاولين. We'll start from hospital staff, temporary employees, volunteers, visitors, and contractor staff. Let's start from hospital staff. And this is the main challenge that security staff are facing. Usually, the staff may find physicians especially and without ID. And here we will be in real dilemma. That's why I start my conversation from leadership support. We instruct the security to write an OVR or to complain about the staff in all levels that they don't have ID. Not only the staff or especially the physicians, is for even for the visitors who are being or will be visiting the maternity wards, nursery, NICU, etc. البطاقة التعريفية دائما نحن نطلب دعم إدارات المستشفى للرجال وسيدات الأمن فيما يخص البطاقات التعريفية للموظفين وخاصة الأطباء. ودائما كنا نلاحظ بشكل يومي هي المشاحنات اللي كانت تحدث بسبب طلب سيدة الأمن أو رجل الأمن من الأطباء وضع بطاقة تعريفية، وكان الأطباء معظمهم كانوا يرفضوا مع الأسف، وهذا الشيء طبعا مرفوض. فنرجو من كل قيادات المستشفيات وإدارتها تدعم إدارة الأمن بهذا الموضوع. النظام فوق الجميع. نحن تكلمنا الحقيقة على موضوع بطاقة تعريفية اللي خاصة للزوار، وذكرنا على وجه الخصوص الحضانات والعناية المركزة للأطفال. الحقيقة في زياراتنا للمستشفيات أثناء زيارتنا مع سباهي طبعا كنا نروح على النيرسري أو الحضانات ونطلب من المسؤول عن التمريض الإجابة على سؤال كسيناريو نقولها نحن والد أحد الأطفال البيبيهات، وحسب ما جرت العادات والتقاليد في مجتمعنا هنا إنه أنا كوالد البيبي حأطلبه منك اقرأ الأذان والإقامة في إذنه حسب السنة، فإيش تتصرفي؟ فهنا طبعا حنشوف التصرف الممرضة، هل حتديني إياه فعلا ولا لا؟ وأعطيها سؤال ثاني كسيناريو، طب إذا أنا أخذت البيبي وحطلع برا حتتصرفي كيف بالضبط؟ هي تقول لي لا أنا أمنعك. طب تمنعني كيف؟ أنت سيدة، أنا رجل أقوى منك، ممكن أدفعك وأخذ الطفل. ونشوف ردود الأفعال بناء على موقفها. So when we visit a nursery, we ask this frequent question as a scenario. We tell the nurse manager or charge nurse at the nursery, what if I am the father of the baby, and as per habit and customs, I would like to read azan and iqam in his ears, and we will follow her reaction accordingly. Of course, here she should request my ID. Either, of course, the ID that I have will depends on the hospital policy. However, for the ID, identification card, let's come back to 11.2. Security personnel and alternative security system لازم يكون في restriction بالمواقع التالية: في غرف التوليد، في العنايات المركزة وخاصة عنايات مركز الأطفال، في الحضانات وأقسام التنويم الأطفال والعمليات. So security personnel or security system should be installed at least in these locations in the delivery, ICU, intensive care, general, not only in ICU, nursery, female wards, operation theaters, morgue, medical record, CSSSD, غرف التعقيم والأرشيف الطبي أو السجلات الطبية والهوسبيتال روف أو سطح المستشفى. ليه سطح المستشفى؟ حنعرض لكم كمثال هنا في حادثة جرت في كم سنة في الرياض. أحد المراجعين صعد على السطوح وهدد بالانتحار، تم التعامل معه الحمد لله وجرت الأمور على خير. A few years before, there was a visitor in some building, Red Crescent building, who we faced at that time 2 or 3 years before. There was a suicidal attempt, and alhamdulillah, it was solved by our colleagues there. However, that's why we have added FMS 11.2.9 that hospital roof should have an access control and should be locked, cannot be open all the time. I will return back to the previous slide. Here I have mentioned hot lab. Why hot lab? Also, a few years before, our colleague, Mr. Engineer Anas Zaid, of course, he is known, very well known. He told us a story that he was in one of the governmental hospital. He opened the hot lab door, and there was no lock, there was no access control. And he called the people there, and they have no justification actually. So such cases hopefully will not be faced in any our hospital. Hospital roof, nuclear medicine, hot lab should be locked all the time along with access control. One more thing, patient room windows, once we visit hospitals, we visit patient rooms. Patient room windows should be locked or to be just operable by security, safety, and housekeeping to prevent, again, children fall, children suicidal attempt, if any. FMS 11.3, there is policy and procedure for the following. For child abduction, lost and found items, safekeeping, involvement of police, of trauma, incidents of violence, women and child abuse. Actually, we found from our humble experience in hospitals during Sbahi visit, always we have missing items in lost and found items and in safekeeping of patient belongings. Always and always, the lost and found policy missed to make categories for the lost and found items. For instance, most of the policy is talking about if someone finds money, they will give it to security. Security will put it in the safe of security. The security manager will contact, I don't know who. Again, the found item will be in security department. We need at the end, what is the final destination? So first of all, we have to have the categories for lost and found items, such as jewelries, golden items, money, clothes. Then we can say that for the money after a certain period, 3 months, 9 months, will transfer the money to the finance will contact a charity accordingly. نحن نتكلم على السياسات الخاصة بالإجراءات الأمنية ومنها سياسة المفقودات والموجودات. فأحيانا لازم نكتب في السياسة أنه نعمل تفنيط للأشياء أو الموجودات في حال لقينا مبلغ مالي كيف نتصرف، في حال لقينا مجوهرات، جوالات، ملابس كيف نتصرف وهلم أجرى. لا يكفي أن نقول إنه الأشياء اللي لقيناها حنسلمها للأمن، الأمن يعمل خطاب يسلمها لإدارة الأمن، إدارة الأمن تحفظها في الملف إلى آخره، أو الموجودات هي في ضمن إدارة الأمن. لازم نكتب إنه فين حتروح آخرتها. مثلا الملابس اللي نلاقيها ممكن نحولها للمغسلة، الفلوس أو الأشياء المجوهرات ممكن نحولها بعد فترة للإدارة المالية اللي بيقوموا بالاتصال بالجمعيات الخيرية للتبرع. نفس الشيء الحقيقة بالنسبة لحفظ ممتلكات المرضى اللي هي safe keeping of patient belongings. ممكن احنا نقول كمان انه نحن كإدارة مستشفى او كمسؤولين في المستشفى لا نقبل الاشياء التالية. ممكن ما نقبل الكراسي، الويل شير، ممكن ما نقبل الاشياء الكبيرة اللي حجمها اكثر من متر، ممكن نقول مش هنقبل الادوية، المأكولات، الازهار، الاشياء البريشبل اللي بتدبر وبتتعب، ما بنكون مسؤولين عن اتلافها. لذلك لازم نحدد في البوليسي ايش الاشياء اللي نقبلها كسيف كيبينج اوف بيشنت بيلونجينجز. في نقطة كمان actually the FMS 11.4 which cause a lot of misunderstanding. Usually in hospitals we request a document evidence for this substandard, and they give us the record of a training of security staff. Actually here we are talking about staff in general, all the staff trained on security alerts, not security trained on emergency cases. So hopefully we can clarify this issue. أنا بتكلم هنا على FMS 11.4. دائما نطلب المستشفيات يعطونا دليل على وجود تدريب الموظفين على رموز وسياسات الأمن. طيب يعطونا تدريب رجال الأمن فقط، وطبعا هذا في سوء تفاهم. نحن نطلب كل الستاف او موظفين المستشفى، منسوبين المستشفى، يكونوا مدربين على الانذارات والحالات الامنيه. هنا اضفنا ملاحظه الحقيقه في ال&D او اقسام تنويم السيدات، بخصوص اللي خاصه امهات واللي بيكون مجاوره للنيرسري، الحضانه الى اخره. وفي احدى الحالات الاختطاف حدثت حديثا في احد مشافي جده، فكنا استفدنا من تجربتهم ومن الاجراء اللي اتخذوا بهذه الحالات طبعا. فدائما كنا نطلب عمليه توجيه وتدريب وتثقيف الامهات انه في حضور احد منسوبي المستشفى لا تسلموا البيبي لما بكون بعهدتها، طبعا لا تسلموا اذا كان وضع الايدنتيفيكيشن كارد او الاي دي تبع المستشفى بشكل واضح وصريح. كمان نطلب من رجال الامن توقيف اي منسوب او موظف من المستشفيات او ممرضه تحمل البيبي بيدها، لازم يكون في الترول الخاص للبيبيهات ونقلهم بين الحضانه وبين الام. We draw our attention, we are draw the attention of mothers in L&D because we have an accident a few months before here in Jeddah, child abduction incident, and I'm sure you have heard about it. So based on the experience in that hospital, we requested them to follow something like instruction and training session to mothers, labor and deliver, of course, but not to deliver the baby while the baby being in mother custody, to deliver it to staff or nurse with ID badge. More or less, we draw the attention of security people that they have stopped any nurse or any staff carrying a baby in the hallway, not by trolley, the bassinet or trolley. The hospital has mechanism to deal with bomb threat, and this is very important actually, and we request FMS department to handle it and focus on the training. نحن نطلب من إدارة FMS والمستشفيات دائما ضرورة التدريب على التهديد بالقنابل، وخاصة بالفترة الأخيرة كنا نلاحظ في بعض مخزوفات تجي على بعض الأماكن ومنها مستشفيات، فكانت يجب التعامل معها تعامل البومب ثريت وتدريب رجال الأمن والسلامة والموظفين بشكل عام عليها. بشتى الأحوال however, the bomb threat should have the following: defining the code or alert, defining the role of person receiving threat, response team, duty and responsibility for all staff involved. Command center location is very important, defining the steps to be taken, and staff should be trained. FMS 13, the hospital has qualified individuals. Actually, this standard could confuse the management of FMS and security because we have so many points of view. In our standard, we have mentioned that number of entrances along with supporting security system may help the FMS department to evaluate the required number. In the last debriefing or chatting between FMS concerns in Sbahi, we have agreed that we should make a better communication with Ministry of Interior, الأمن الوقائي, to help us in defining the security plan and security staff number accordingly. كان في خلط الحقيقة بموضوع تحديد عدد رجال الأمن أو سيادة الأمن اللازمين في المستشفى، وحددناها نحن في سباهي بعدد المداخل وخاصة المداخل اللي بتكون مفتوحة 24 ساعة، إضافة إلى تأثير وجود سيستم والكاميرات والأكسس كنترول لتحديد العدد. لكن وهذه كانت الحقيقة تسبب شوية خلط عند إدارات المستشفيات وإدارة الFMS تحديداً. فكان نحن اتفقنا مع السورفير داخل سباهي، الأخوان كلهم شاركوا، واتفقنا بالتواصل مع وزارة الداخلية الأمن الوقائي للمساعدة بوضع خطط أمنية للمستشفيات من وجهة نظرهم، وبالتالي بيسهل على المستشفيات اختيار العدد الصحيح لكل مستشفى، وخاصة في عنا إدارات تحتاج أن تكون مفتوحة 24 ساعة مثل إدارة الطوارئ، وفي إدارات أخرى يمكن ما تحتاج إلا أثناء النهار أو بشفتين من أصل 3. من ضمن البوليسي والأشياء المطلوبة الحقيقة في معايير السباهي وخاصة في ملفات الموظفين، لازم نشوف الوصف الوظيفي، لازم نشوف أنه تدريب رجال الأمن تم بمجال عملهم ومواقعهم حسب الوصف الوظيفي، ولازم يتم تدريب منسوب الأمن على رموز الطوارئ، وهذا الشيء مهم كتير. In our Sbahi surveying processes, we have a dedicated session for personnel file, which included the written job description with details and oriented on their scope of work, location, along with orientation of security personnel on emergency codes. Plus, we have to train or to have an evidence that security staff trained and oriented on fire safety and how to use the fire extinguishers as well. دور رجال الأمن الحقيقة حساس جدا، وفعلا 3 أشياء المفروض يكون موضح فيها بسياساتنا وخططنا كمستشفيات دور رجل الأمن فيها. من ضمنها خطة الطوارئ الخارجية وخطة الطوارئ الداخلية وسياسة منع التدخين. حنتكلم عليها إن شاء الله في تشابتر آخر، لكن خليني أوضح إنه نو سموكينج بوليسي معظم المستشفيات بتعطينا بوليسي إنه حسب المرسوم الملكي ممنوع وما بعرف إيش ويمكن ولا يمكن وفي استثناءات، لكن نغفل الحقيقة دور رجال الأمن في الأمور التالية. لازم سياسات منع التدخين تتضمن ما هو الإجراء المتخذ والمناسب مع المريض إذا لقينا عم ندخن داخل غرفة المرضى، مع الستاف ما هي الإجراءات المناسبة، ومع الزوار أو المراجعين. So we have to identify the security personnel in 3 vital locations, which is external disaster plan, internal disaster plan, and no-smoking policy. In no-smoking policy, we have to identify the security role in case of patient room, of course, in case of staff smoking and visitors. We have to identify our procedure and disciplinary action accordingly. One of policies is security conducts security rounds. It's a policy 3 times or 3 shifts a day. لازم نعمل سياسة تحدد عمل الجولات الأمنية 3 مرات أو 3 شفتات مع وجود سجل ملاحظات بهذه الجولات. لازم نشجع رجال الأمن مثل ما حكينا في البداية على استعمال ال OVR system. دائما تعرفوا ال OVR هي مهم جدا لإدارات المستشفى وإدارة الجودة بتحديد الاستراتيجيات والبوليسي. فكتير الاو في ار الامني مهم حتى نبني عليه الريسك مانجمنت او اداره المخاطر الامنيه. OVR system should be, we should encourage security staff use OVR, as OVR is playing a very vital role in our strategic plan, in our security risk assessment as well. في عندنا تحديات تجاه المستشفيات بالنظام الأمني، فيها أول شيء تدني مستوى التأهيل والتدريب، تدني الرواتب، الدوران الوظيفي، وفي عندنا عدم توفر الأنظمة والقوانين والتجهيزات الأمنية. Most of our challenge and obstacles is in hospitals is low training, qualification of security staff, low wages, turnover very high, and non-availability of required policy procedure and equipment as well. I don't know whether if we have any question, Mr. Abdul Mohsen, if you have any question, you want to make verbal interference before starting the next session. Mr. Abdul Mohsen, are you with me?
Yes. Thank you so much, Engineer Nawar, for this presentation. Would like to thank all audience who are joining us in this discussion and these presentations. Of course, today, as per our agenda, we will be covering 5 main subjects. The first one is the security-related standards, 11 to 13, and we will be covering as well the hazardous materials and waste presentation, 14 and 15. And we will be covering the internal, external disasters, 16 and 17, also the matter related to fire safety. So these are the 5 subjects that we will be covering today. The point that Engineer Nawar mentioned regarding of determining the number of security guards, the issues that when we go and visit some hospitals, you see a complete hospital, even if it's a small hospital, 50 beds hospital or 100 beds hospital, or maybe less than that, 25, 30 hospitals. And you will find 1 security guy or 2 security guys. This would not be enough to operate a hospital. So the number of security would determine, of course, on the size of the hospital, the nature of the hospital. A mental hospital not be treated like a maternity and children hospital or like a general hospital. The number of entrances and exits, the availability of access control system or CCTV, these system can be an alternate for the availability of security guards. So that's one of the questions that we received. If we do have a system installed on a door, will it be sufficient rather than having a security guard? Yes. If it's a reliable system, well monitored and well maintained system, yes. There are a lot of cooperation that need to be taken care between security guards and safety officers. They should complement each other and complement each other's work, respond together to all emergency cases and all disasters. As Engineer Nawar said, the nature of the hospital, the number of entrances, exits, there are some guidelines. I am sure that Ministry of Health hospitals, I believe, received a distribution table showing the number of security guards required. That's one key area of that you can justify or tell the number of security guards you need. Of course, as Engineer Nawar said, police department, اللي هو الأمن الوقائي. Police department has the standards for private security companies. The standard for private security companies that they visit the location, they visit the site, and based on that, they determine the required number. So if you needed further assistance, you can either refer to MOH standard disregard, or you can ask the police department to help you in making that decision. I received a question, Engineer Nawar, I would like to answer, please, from
Yes.
one of the attendees regard of what is the expected role from security during Mr. Strong cases. How do they respond to Mr. Strong cases? Will the security have a role, for example, in Code Orange? That's another question. So if you can elaborate a little bit before starting your next presentation.
Yes, of course, but it's mentioned in the next session, so we have to avoid any duplication. Let me start the next session. I will explain it.
Okay, thank you.
So, okay, now we reached the second session, which is hazardous materials and waste management plan. It's coming under FMS 14 to 15. From our experience, we have found that in healthcare safe operation pillars, we have 3 pillars for safe operation, actually. The 3 pillars are the fire safety, the medical gas, and nurse call system. This is the main pillars to run the hospital under safe operation. However, we have different items that should be kept under monitoring and inventory. One of them is the biomedical equipment, and our biomed engineers know this, and they are aware of these challenges. The second one is the hazmat. Why? Because hazmats are like chemical weapons factory, open factory. And I hope we give this issue the necessary attention, and I will continue based on this fact. In Sbahi standards, we have FMS number 14, that hospital ensure of safe management. And we should have a policy. Written hazardous material include some following items, but I will start from the following. The hazmat identification or definition is any material or substances, if released or misused, can pose a threat to the life, to the health, to the environment as well. Before going further, there are some objectives I would like to follow in terms of hazmat. Now, first of all, I'm mentioning the example in all lectures we are doing along with Mr. Abdul, that I get a telephone call from our sister, nurse sister. She called us and asked me, actually, we have a small oxygen cylinder in our crash cart. Can I consider it as a hazmat? And again, we are answering our sisters in nursing that please refer the categories of hazmat classes or classification, which is internationally identified as follows. Class 1 is the explosive, class 2 gases, class 3 flammable liquids, 4 flammable solids, 5 oxidizers and organic peroxides, number 6 poisons and biohazards, number 7, which is very important, radioactive materials, number 8 corrosive and miscellaneous, number 9. Let me count it one by one and give example for each class. Examples. The example is fireworks, ammunition, anti-compositions. Class 2, gases, where we have 2 kinds of gases, flammable, non-flammable, we have 3, and poison gases. Flammable gases like propane, like the gas we are using in kitchens, in our home even, we are using a propane. Non-flammable like neon, helium, carbon dioxide, and poison gases like cyanide, chlorine, and sarin. Class 3, flammable liquids like gasoline and alcohol, and we have combustible liquids like fuel oil and plastic solvent. Class 4, the flammable solids, such as aluminum, matches, carbon, phosphorus, sodium, etc. Class 5, oxidizers, gases like oxygen or chlorine, liquids, solids, and we have organic peroxides as well. Class 6 is poisons and biohazards. Poisons like the arsenic solvents and mercury. And you know, mercury is our headache in FMS department. But alhamdulillah, we thank God that now usage of mercury is very rare. We used to meet it to see mercury in the dental department, but nowadays we don't see it. I think it's removed completely. However, just a few months before, we visited a remote area hospital. We found that thermometer of measuring the temperature was mercury, manufactured by mercury. And the biohazards like bacteria, viruses, toxins, and the clinical waste, as you see here, all kinds of clinical waste are hazards or biohazards. The radioactive, where we have nuclear medicine, and of course the industrial X-ray materials. You remember before PAX system, we were to use the film and some materials for films, but now it's removed from service, as you know. Corrosives, like the battery fluid, dyes, extinguisher chargers, paint, and acids. The miscellaneous is very important. Gases or scavenging gases. That's why we have that's outlet here in operation theater, exhausted outside the hospital. And of course, asbestos batteries are included in this regard. Second objective, which is SDS, because we have 14.3 talking about safety data sheet. Actually, the old name was MSDS. Nowadays, since 2 or 3 years before in the States and Canada, they changed the name into SDS. So please don't use MSDS, otherwise they will call you old-fashioned. However, SDS is mentioned in our substandards. What is the SDS? It's actually the information that contain the nature and hazard material about the hazard materials. Approximately, we have in the nature more than 750,000 materials. How could we keep SDS for all of these materials? It's impossible. So we can get information about this hazmat in our work area in hospitals. The first one could be in the hospital website if you have it. And of course, you will get it from purchasing and supply chain because they are the party who are dealing with suppliers. We should have it in departmental folder, each department. But we should have all SDS we have in the hospital for related hazmat inside the department. We are check this one in our standards. If you don't find any reference, it's easy. You can find an application on your smartphone. You can get this one as instance to find any SDS in the world. So we have 16 sections in SDS. I will count it rapidly. The first one or section 1 is identification, the name of product, synonyms, address, etc. And supplemental information. Section 2, the hazards identification, GHS. I will explain in the next slides the health hazards, health categories, etc. Section 3, composition, the ingredients, chemical name, the mixtures. Section 4, first aid measures in case of contact, ingestion of or inhalation, and the symptoms of overexposure. Firefighting, what is the fire extinguisher? The proper fire extinguisher that I can use for a certain materials. We have to refer to SDS. In case of accidental release measures, there's an item explain all these concerns. handling and storage, which is very important for us and for safety officers, because safety officers are involved in this area specifically. And we will explain it in the next slides. Number 8, exposure controls and personal protection. Of course, here we have reference from OSHA, and we have some recommended ventilation parameters in terms of temperature, ventilation, air change per hour, humidity, etc. Section 9, physical or chemical properties of the smell, appearance, the boiling point, the freezing point, and the flash point, which is important as an item of fire triangle. Section 10, stability and reactivity. 11, the toxicological information. 12, ecological, disposal consideration, transport. Again, this is very regulatory information. The last one is under other information category, include the data of preparation that include original version, overview of changes, etc. That's why if you have noticed in our standard 14.5, we should have a label for the following items, which we have included in the previous slides as hazmat classification. All are included. Even the leak here, we should have to report via OVR or different systems. The third objectives about tags, signs, and labels. Actually, labeling of hazards. We have so many systems or standards for chemicals and their hazards thereof. For instance, we have the NFB Diamond, we have Department of Transportation in the United States, and we have OSHA HASCOM. Let's explain the most popular, which is NFPA Diamond or NFPA communication labeling, the hazards in different meaning. Briefly or shortly, the color here, they are using an NFPA the color to define the type of hazard, the colors, and the number to rate the degree of hazards. Like what? Let's have an example. The bleach, as you see here in the left side, we have number 2 at the blue section. Let me come back here. The color of blue color is indicator for health hazard. The red color for fire hazards, yellow for activity, and white for specific hazards to identify this material as oxidizers, acid, corrosive, etc. And that's why in this example at the left side, this bleach, if you see number 2 in the blue section, this indicate the hazards to the health, as we mentioned before. Number 0 at the red means it's not flammable, non-combustible material. Number 1 on the yellow, showing the reactivity rating. And in the white, OX means oxidizers. Now let's come back to the GHS that I have mentioned previously. Actually, it stands for, of course, globally harmonized system. It's a standardized system adopted by United Nations and so many countries. And of course, KSA adopted also this system. We call it histogram, actually, pictogram, sorry, GHS pictogram. It's a kind of shape will give you the indicator. It's not written, but let's show you the pictogram along with the explanation. If you find it somewhere in the truck or in the box that including this kind of hazards. However, we have 9 hazards as you see here. Let's have them one by one. if you see this pictogram, just a flame means this is flammable or self-heating or organic or self-active, etc. So it's on, you will see only the shape, only the flame. Flame with circle, this means oxidizers or contribute oxygen to the combustion process. And we should not store it near flammable. Number 3, exploding bomb, as you see, it's easy to be recognized. Gas cylinder, corrosion, skin corrosion or burns, and it's easy to be recognized as well. And skull with crossbones mean acute toxicity. Health hazard, human body, the carcinogen, etc. And aspiration, toxicity. Exclamation mark explaining that it's irritant for skin and eyes and very active respiratory tract. And this is the last one, showing the fish and the tree along with water or river, this aquatic toxicity. Now let's come to the most important hazmat objective, which is hazmat cycle. As you see here, the supplier here is handling the hazmat, transporting to the supply chain in the hospital. The supply chain has two options, either to handle to the user department or to storage. So storage is very important here. Of course, they will storage, register here, then to the user department, or directly transferred from receiving or from the store to the department, where the department handle it, transport it. After the department use it, they will handle again, maybe storage, use, and disposal, which is very important, the disposal. So that's why in our standards, we give an importance to this issue, where we should have appropriate handling, storing, and transportation. I will count criteria for or general guidelines for storage. The first one, actually, which I put a red star here, a lot of questions are coming to surveyors. What is the major rule in hazmat? Actually, to keep your facility safe, please keep oxidizers away from flammables and combustibles. That's it. This is the whole issue, marked by a red star. Oxidizers away from flammable. If you see at the right bottom here, this, where we have oxygen and acetylene left on the top of the roof, on the rooftop in one of our hospitals, which is very, very dangerous. So one of the guidelines is store flammable combustible in approved safety cabinet like this one. Not any cabinet, should be fire rated. And of course, we have to pay attention for label storage area according to the type of chemical. Furthermore, we have to keep storage area well lit, appropriately ventilated, and cool temperature. And we have to keep the fire extinguisher to be available in the location. Actually, I put it in different page to make it more easier for you. The most important for storage as a sequences. First of all, please read the label and SDS, related SDS. We have to ask ourselves, what temperature should be stored? Will this material reactive with near chemicals? That's why we have to keep oxidizers away from combustible and chemicals. Number 3, is material stored in its original container, fire rated or not, based on fire rating, for instance. And the last one, if not, is it labeled properly or not? The education, we pay in Sbahi, we pay attention to education and training based on hazmat classification, based on SDS. Let's come to the spills. The spills is uncontained material of any service, including tea, coffee, or whatever. This is the spill. So same will apply in hospitals. But in hospitals, we have a classification for spills. We have 3 kinds of spills: the biological, chemical, and radiological. For biological and chemical spills, we have 2 kinds, either major or minor. But in case of radioactive materials or radiological spill, it's not major and minor because all are major. We classify it into direct and indirect radiological spill. In all circumstances, please refer to SDS. 14.2, and this is very important, each department should have a hazmat list. The following information is required: name of chemicals, maximum allowed, responsible person, contact number, purpose of use. I put again a star here for minimum allowed. What's our reference in this regard? It's not the end user request, by the way. It's not the available space. We have references, international or national references. So the first one will be NAP 30, flammable and combustible liquid codes. Or you can use NAP 45, fire protection for laboratories using chemicals. And we can refer to OSHA regulations. Last year, we have mandatory reference in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We have the Saudi Building Code. You can find your request in all these references, but all are mentioned in Saudi Building Code. I attached here for your kind reference just an example or sample document from hospitals. Actually, it was a military hospital. They have very good hazmat team. This is an example for maximum quantity of flammable and combustible in laboratory. This one, combustible liquid, but excluding laboratory. And this one showing an example for the acute toxicity estimate. Again, all these matrix, you can retrieve it from Saudi Building Code, calculate your matrix criteria, and calculate the allowed quantity accordingly. 14.4, talking about PPEs and the kits for spills. We have 2 kinds of spill kit, either biological or chemical. Of course, we have radiological, but it's different. The other one should be lidded, not like this. Chemical spill kits should include the following: spill sign, very important, face mask, gloves, gown, goggles, scoop, and absorbent towels as well. Again, even the spills, we classified it, but we should classify it in terms of minor or major. Small spill, minor, should be less than a numeric value of cc or milliliter, while the major should be more than specific value cc or milliliter, or it's for unknown chemicals, or that cause casualty, caused already, or injured person. At that time, we can consider it as a major spill, and we can activate code orange accordingly. Most of questions we are receiving, what is the quantity that identify the largest spill? There is no specific amount. It depends on hospital policy. However, from practice, usually we shared laboratory people and infection control to help us in identification of major spills. And actually, most of the hospital adapted 1,000 or 1,500 cc as a reference for major spill. If it's less, so it's minor. Waste management control is FMS 15, where the hospital should have a waste management plan, include handling and storing, and should be implemented as observation. Then staff should be trained. I have written here one room, one gloves, because we have seen in hospital, even by the way, outside the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we have seen this issue that housekeepers are cleaning the room, collecting the waste, the medical waste from a room, wearing a certain gloves, then close the door with same gloves, open another room, patient room with same gloves, push the bottom of elevator, open the door, open the exit door with same gloves, meaning the infection is spreaded by a good 10 of housekeeping, of course. And that's why here we are focusing on the training for especially housekeeping staff. In general, I have put this category for the waste. Any garbage or waste coming from a healthcare institution is a medical waste. We count it. Maybe paper, maybe carton, it's okay. It's coming from healthcare institution, it's medical. But we have categories. The first one is healthcare non-risk, which is like non-contaminated, like paper and cartons. The second one is pressurized containers, like aerosol containers, oxygen, compressed air, etc. Construction debris inside the hospital, it is medical waste. The last one, which is very important, is the healthcare risk waste, which is our concern, that could potentially contaminated with an infection agent, chemical or radioactive materials. Like what? Like sharps, it's infectious waste. We have chemical hazards like toxic, corrosive, and we have radioactive waste. One of the simplest example in hospitals, we see recapped syringes, which reflect how the hospital administer the hazmat and waste management. That's all, Mr. Abdel Mohsen. Please, if you have any concern.
Thank you so much, Engineer Nawar, for a very informative presentation. I have a question here regard of any recommendation on the allowable quantities. What's the difference that the hospitals can refer to in regard of allowable quantities per units?
Yeah, actually, I have mentioned in one of our slides, we have NFPA 30, we have NFPA 45, we have OSHA regulations, and at last we have Saudi building code that most recommended in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So Saudi building code. Okay, sir. Mr. Abdel Mohsen? Okay, maybe let's start our next session. Mr. Abdel Mohsen, are you with me? Okay. Let's now shift to the next session, third one. Talking about hospital readiness during emergency external and internal plans. As a matter of fact, we have two kinds of emergency. We have internal and external. What is the difference between both? There was misunderstanding that internal disaster plan in case of fire, and we found out that some hospitals consider that external disaster plan means our team will go to the another hospitals where they have external disaster. These concepts are absolutely wrong. It's easy to differentiate between both. Internal disaster doesn't mean fire only. It can identify any cause like building collapse, like gas leakage, like utility failure, or in general, we can say that any cause, any incident that cause major disruption on the patient flow or administration of patients and in all departments. For the external disaster plan would be activated in case of outside the hospital. I mean, like airplane crash, Allah forbid, like car incidents, flood, of course, earthquake, etc. So what is the disaster? It means in case we have injured or casualty or killed dead people, if we have disruption of our daily work, if we have damage for environment, if we have loss of properties, then we call it disaster and activate the code accordingly. We have before and after the disaster, and sorry for not translating this because I took it from our teacher, Mr. Abdel Shrein. However, before the disaster, we are using medication protocol, then preparation, and after the disaster, we should have response and recovery. This is the stages of disaster before and after. What are the standards for external disaster? We should have a plan, include the following: identification of potential emergencies, like what we have mentioned before, names and title of staff to be called along with their contact number, and we call it call up tree. Duties and responsibility of hospital leaders. And finally, the triage area, their location, and triage action cards as well. We should have to identify the person or the individual responsible for announcing the emergency. We should have a control room mentioned in the policy, location, and the person in charge. We should identify the total number of beds that should be evacuated in case of emergency, external disaster plan. We should identify here the security personnel, okay? Because in case of emergency, external emergency, you will have the media people, newspapers, visitors. So who will organize these entrances? Of course, the security people. And we have to mention the role of each department in the hospital, concerned department, for instance. Again, the hospital should conduct one external disaster plan once a year. We have to make sure availability of ambulances, medical supplies, medical bags, drugs, and mobile monitors. And we should have an orientation for a plan, for this plan approved and implemented. Let's come now to the internal plan or internal disaster plan. Again, maybe it's similar to the external. We should have the names of staff that are to be called in case of the internal and disaster, along with contact number. We should know the location of control room, responsibility of hospital leaders, procedure of relocation patient from department to department. For instance, in case of fire in operation theater, where we should have or transfer the patient. Of course, the ER or ICU should be our alternative, for instance. Again, we should identify the person who will deal with our electricity, supply and with a medical gas, because both items are affecting the fire, for instance. And we need to close or shut off these two resources. Not anyone can handle it. We have to identify it in the policy. We have to identify a simple point, which is a temporary point for gathering the employees and the patients before making the general evacuation. Of course, we call it assembly point. Usually assembly points to be chosen near the staircases. But we have to train our people that the first step in evacuation is horizontally in the assembly point. But we have to train them what next, because most of the hospitals, we are asking them, okay, where is the assembly point? It's here. Where we should have to transfer the patients? Okay, from here to the assembly point. Okay, what next? Nobody answered what next. So we have to train the staff for the sequences of our plan. We should have an evacuation maps showing the following. You are here, we call it you are here, of course. You are here, fire extinguishers, fire hose, blankets, escape route, assembly point, fire exit, call point, we call it break glass or pull station, and medical gas isolation valves. Usually, we are looking for minimum size, which A3 should be minimum size. A4 is not acceptable. No one can recognize the details. So minimum A3 size, and should be heavy duty, not just a paper or laminated paper. Should be heavy duty along with the frame and minimum A3 size. The fire drills should be conducted. As you know, fire drills should be conducted 4 times in inpatient, each shift. We should have the drill 2 times in outpatient, OPD, and 1 time in administrative department. And we should use all the techniques of race and pass. All people or staff should be trained, participated, recorded once a year. Here, let's, I know it's maybe simple information, but let's talk about it fastly. Okay. Here, the fire drill plan identification. Let's just remind you the physical makeup of fire. Of course, if the chemical reaction was ready along with these 3 factors, we will have a fire, and we call it fire triangle, which consists of heat, fuel, and oxygen. Of course, we should train our people in RACE. RACE stands for rescue patients, activate the alarm, confine the fire. By how? By put wet towels, by testing the doors, of course, and moving portable oxygen cylinders and shut off oxygen cylinders as well. Then E stands for extinguish if you can, using PASS acronym. If you cannot, we have to evacuate. Of course, this technique is written by Arabic again. We taught our staff before opening any door in suspected fire incidents. We told them, please try to touch the door by backside of your hand, because it's more sensitive than your hand, the front side. If it's hot, do not open it. If you can open it, just knee down a little bit, open it to recognize whether there is a patient or colleague inside. And of course, we train our people on how to activate the alarm by yelling code red, then activate the alarm, then telephone the emergency numbers, and we train our people to be calm while reporting the fire, where they should mention the name, ID, the correct location, mention whether the people inside direct risk, and he will ask the operator to repeat his message to avoid any ambiguity or miscommunication. Confine the fire by, as mentioned before, transfer oxygen cylinders with towel under beneath the door, closing all doors, and shut off oxygen valve. Then start extinguish using a fire extinguisher if the fire could be contained. Otherwise, we have to evacuate. Of course, pass techniques. All staff should be trained. Then start evacuating. This is very routine procedure. Actually, I will not repeat it. After evacuating, we have to mark the room that have been checked, either by putting, a tag room checked, or put the pillow under beneath the door. And after that, we have to direct the people, patients, and the staff to the assembly point. We should remind you about the command center and who are the people or the group that should be response. Of course, or we call it the first emergency response group, including the safety, security, safety technician on duty, master key, low current, duty manager. Actually, here I have attached a specific fire plan, because in our standards, specific department fire plan is required for at least pharmacy, ICU, operation theater, laboratory, etc. So I have attached an example from X-ray, from radiology. They have prepared their plan in this sequences. First of all, they have put the rescue, the race acronym, along with the photos and necessary information. Then they have located the extinguisher they have in the department, like beside MRI and X-ray, near scrubbing room, etc. Then for evacuation, they have put 3 guidelines: evacuate the patient nearest to the fire area first, the first one, this is the priority. Then evacuate to the adjacent unit, then to the ground floor. Of course, if they have patients with IV lines, they are guiding them how to take him or her, then bring as much as medicine or drugs, how to cover the patient, then proceed to transfer to assembly point. Then how to follow the evacuation routes and rule. Mr. Abdul Hussein, any questions? Mr. Abdul Hussein, are you with me?
Yes, thank you, Engineer Nawar. We received 2 questions, if you can answer for us.
Please.
One is, I think you answered one which regarding specific unit plans require specific drills and specific plans, like the OR, for example. You mentioned OR, and we know that there are standards that are scored by the FMS surveyors related to having special knowledge about staff in OR on how to respond to fire, the knowledge about oxidizer and these things. If you can elaborate a bit on this. The second question, the second question was related to frequency of drills. How often do we need internal disaster drills? Thank you.
Okay, now for operation theater, actually there is no wrong policy or plan and correct plan. It depends on the circumstances of each department. Okay, you can refer to your safety officer along with the operation theater staff to create a dedicated plan only for operation theater. For instance, I'm saying if the fire alarm activated and smoke spread, of course, the surgeon will start to close the patient, then get the open patient, of course, then direct the staff and the operation bed or trolley or stretcher to the ICU if it's adjacent or to the ER, and start the procedures of raise and pass accordingly. As we mentioned here in the radiology department, there's no specific plan actually. Again, it depends on your circumstances. Second question, what was it, Mr. Mohsen?
Thank you. The second question was the frequency of conducting drills. How often do we conduct drills?
Yes. Okay. Actually, we mentioned it before that it should be conducted 4 times each shift in inpatient wards. So 4 times each shift annually. In outpatient, 2 times. In administrative, 1 time, once a year.
What in regard of lab and kitchen, in what category does it fall?
Sorry, what category?
What category? How many times do we need to do it? Being a critical hazardous area, lab and kitchen, how often do we need to do it?
Kitchen once a year. Lab, I compare it with the outpatient, so twice a year is enough.
Thank you.
Okay.
We can proceed for the second presentation for the safety.
Second course, I mean, number 4.
Yes.
Okay. Now the last one is live fire safety principles. Fire safety systems is very important. Actually, we call it fire prevention. However, let's count the fire safety systems. We should have the fire detection, fire suppression, smoke management, and emergency lighting and standby power. But before going further, let's confess that we cannot avoid fire 100%. Fires occur in any country of the world, any time, anywhere. You cannot prevent it 100%. Rather than having the systems for fire suppression, fire detection, let's prepare ourselves, our staff, our facility before the fire occurred or before having these systems. We should have the facility divided into small compartments, قطاعات حريق, before installing the detection system, installing the fire-rated doors, using fire stop materials over the penetration in the fire zones. Let's have all this set up. Then we can go to monitor and make the PPM for fire detection, fire suppression, etc. So this is much important than the devices or systems. And please let's remember that evacuating 200 or 300 patients within 3-5 minutes is impossible. No staff in the world can do it. So shall I depend on the detection system or fire suppression or the evacuation procedure? No, of course, or the drills? No. Let's have our facility ready to face such incidents, Allah forbid, and we call it fire prevention. So the fire detection means the control panel, as you see here, means smoke detectors, heat detectors, sirens, fire alarm strobe, break glass or police station, whatever. All of these are fire detection component. Fire suppression means all sort of sprinkler deflector in the left side, the fire pump area, including the diesel, electricity, and the jockey pump, the fire hose reel, clean agent, fire extinguishers, all kind, and wet chemical. Smoke management, of course, we have so many items that we have to consider. First of all, staircase or elevator shaft pressurization. We should have the atrium smoke control, and we have smoke barriers or exhaust. And always remember, we cannot evacuate this number of patients without meeting all these criteria. This is very active factor in our system, actually, that we should have the standby power system and emergency lighting. Of course, this is including UPSs as well. Emergency lighting means that on lighting means the illuminated directional signs as well. Again, as a fire prevention concept, remember please, top priority for smoke compartments, fire-rated doors, then how to train our people in safe evacuation, how to make the fire drills, how to deal with hazmat and combustible materials that may cause a fire. FMS 19, the hospital support fire prevention. Like what? Like purchasing or procuring materials, like curtains, drapes, pens, etc. We should separate the dangerous materials. The one we have mentioned in the previous session, just please separate the flammable or combustible from oxidizers. That's it. This is the main rule, the guidelines. Separate both oxidizers from combustibles and chemicals. We should have fire zone, fire-rated doors around the fire zone. We should install fire stop materials in fire zones, and we should train our people how to use fire extinguisher, as mentioned before. This is an example from fire stop materials. Actually, the most popular here and most famous companies are Hilti and 3M, to the best of my knowledge. Once you install it in your hospital above the fire-rated doors or in the penetration between fire zone and others, please try to have this metallic tag and install it around the fire stop materials to prove that we are installing the proper fire stop materials as a proof. Number 20, we have to make sure that the number of extinguishers as per civil defense guidelines, we should make sure that appropriately distributed and installed as per civil defense. Then we have to check the fire extinguishers on monthly basis. The height of the extinguishers. Actually, NFPA and Saudi Building Code has identified the height, as you see here, the height, as you see here. For instance, if you have a fire extinguisher more than 18 kilograms, so the height will be 1.5 maximum. Of course, the lever height. If it's more than 18 kilograms, then the height would be 1.1 meter, with one condition, should be 10 centimeters above floor level. Let's avoid this height. The fire extinguisher here and the fire hose reel is too much high. It's very hard for staff, especially for nurses, for ladies, to open it or to use the fire extinguisher. So the height is too much here. The hospital has an effective fire alarm system. And here, let's focus on something. The hospital should fully have fire alarm system. All the hospital, no exceptions here. In our sessions in surveying, we have document evidence and observations. In document evidence, we should review the inspection schedule. And let's here differentiate between inspection, testing, and PPM. Inspection could be parallel with the PPM, but testing is different. Testing means testing. You have to operate something to make sure that it's working. However, in case of construction, the hospital cannot tell us we are covering the smoke detector only. If you have a construction, a renovation project, dust generation, etc., you should confine this area and locate warden or shift or patrol around the clock, because you are inactivate the system, which is not acceptable. And let's keep in mind that standard FMS 21.3 is our reference, which is PPM. If we don't have PPM and observation reveals that control alarm system or fire alarm system control panel is faulted, then we will get 0, unfortunately. As observation, we have to inspect the functioning of fire alarm system. How? We should visit the control panel and make sure that no fault is existing, like this case here, like this case here. And if you see here in the right side, one of the, I don't know whether medical record or store, but unfortunately the smoke detector was covered by the plastic cover. Fire alarm system testing should be either weekly or monthly. Of course, this kind of testing can be done by the hospital staff. Again, testing means using smoke spray, using any techniques, but you have to test the smoke detectors. In all hospitals, you have to make the testing to cover all the detectors. If you have 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 detectors, you have to cover it within 1 year. And advise you to use the holidays to accelerate your testing. The fire alarm system has preventive maintenance. This is very major, and we are looking here for the PPM, which is either monthly or quarterly. But we stipulate in coordination with civil defense that maintenance must be performed by a company or third party certified by civil defense. This is very vital. If you have a PPM monthly done by the hospital or contractor, it's okay. But the quarterly should be done by civil defense, by company certified by civil defense. This is taken from civil defense website. You can see here the criteria or checklist. Surveyors of Sbahi cannot accept just something like tick, tick, tick. We have to identify the items we check. Elevators are connected to fire alarm system. Here we have two substandards. The first one, we should see the schematic or single line diagram or distribution drawing to ensure that elevators are connected to the fire alarm system, like this one. And we should visit the elevator room to make sure that elevator control box has the cable connected here and labeled the fire alarm system. It's connected to the control panel of elevator. And please keep in mind, elevators cannot be used during fires unless otherwise fire rated, and the shaft of the elevator is separated from the main building, and the cables should be fire rated as well. We have some hospitals in the kingdom can be used during the fire and usually dedicated for civil defense uses, especially in medical cities. The hospital has fire suppression system. Of course, sometimes we face that hospital has administration building, but outside the hospital. If the administration building have 2 floors and do not have suppression system, is okay, we can tolerate. But if the administration building is connected or within the hospital, then it's not accepted. The main rule, the hospital should be fully sprinklered. Observation, to make sure that we have a functional sprinkler system, we visit usually the fire pump to make sure that jockey pump are working. We ask the technician to open the drain. If the jockey pump starts, means our system is good. Then we can try the fire hose reel to evaluate the pressure within whether it's good or not. And please be sure that the pump room or the electrical diesel pump set to auto, because most of the people or the technician usually leave the pump on off mode, which is not acceptable at all. Should be auto all the time. Hospital has a sprinkler system as a document evidence, inspection, as we mentioned here, inspection done by the hospital, and we have to follow the corrective actions if there is something wrong. And of course, monthly inspection should be done by company certified for defense. Please bear in mind that PPM, especially the quarterly PPM for sprinkler system, for fire alarm, for clean agent, wet chemical, should be done, and fire hose standby should be done by a company certified by civil defense, especially the quarterly PPM for all these systems. This is just a photo from one of the hospitals. You can see that sprinkler deflector is very close to the cabinet of medical record. It should be, as per Saudi building code and NFPA, should be between 45 to 50 centimeters. And in this case, FM200 is preferable. The clean agent mean any brand name. FM200, Fire Pro, Novec, it doesn't matter. But usually, it seems to me that FM200, the most popular, not only in Saudi Arabia, even in the States, is the most popular system. Usually we install this kind of clean agent in public area. Ca2, carbon dioxide, is clean agent, but could be used as a separation system and installed non-occupied area like generators and electrical rooms. FM200, Novec, Fire Pro, all are accepted. Especially, let me tell you something. Civil defense requires suppression system. They don't care about the nature of suppression system. Sprinkler is acceptable, FM200 is acceptable, CO2 is acceptable. They want the fire to be suppressed. They don't care about the nature of the equipment or the activity what you have. In medical record, we should have FM200 to avoid the civil defense set. Even in the operation room. The hospital has wet chemical. Wet chemical, usually we have it in kitchens. This is a sort of equipment. As you see here, we have the hoods or the nozzles, along with the triggers. The cylinder here, there is water and some chemicals. And in the box, stainless steel box, there is so many cylinders. Containance is calcium carbonate, etc. And we have a trigger adjusted that with temperature this could be operated. So that's why once you visit the hospital, we have to ask the responsible in the kitchen at what temperature, what degree you have adjust your trigger. As I remember, it was 80, 95, 110. So the people of the kitchen should identify the temperature or the degrees that adjusted on the trigger or the sensor. And in case of fire, we have to interview all the stuff in the kitchen on how to activate it in case of fire. And the system was not activated. So this is the manual valve. Again, PPM should be done by company certified by civil defense. This is a sort of examples. Standpipes and hose system, same, should not be jeopardized by or blocked. Again, PPM should be done by company or personnel certified by civil defense. 23, talking about fire exits, and here I know we will have a lot of questions. Let me tell you something. All fire doors are emergency exit, but not all emergency exits are fire door. Okay, so we have two kinds of doors. Exit, this should not be fire rated, while the doors between two fire zones should be fire rated. Fire exits should not be locked. This, we should have panic hardware between or on the direction of the escape, but for the outdoor, the fire exit open to air is not required to be fire rated or even have panic hardware. We should have the fire exit clearly marked, illuminated, connected to the generator. 24, here we are talking about non-smoking policy again. Again, non-smoking policy should have how to act in case of patients, visitors, and staff. We have to differentiate between disciplinary action with all these categories. And as observation, we should not see any cigarette butts around the building. And of course, all of you have received the related decree from Minister of Health and etc. and the executive list, you know about it. And by the way, in Sbahi, we recommend to have all this signage, I mean, no smoking, to be heavy duty, posted in the elevators, main entrances, workshop, rooftop, and in the staircases as well. No obstruction to exit fire extinguishers, as you see here. Emergency lighting should be adequate for safe evacuation. And here, if you have built-in emergency lighting built in within the ceiling, so if you have three, the fourth one will be emergency lighting. So you have three panel or lighting. The fourth one will be the lighting, or you should have the manual one. By the way, light batteries, the one here at the right side, if you have built an emergency power, we should have this lighting battery in two locations, the OR theater and generator room. 24/4, talking about storage, the general rule here is no storage on the floor. Should be platform or shelves or whatever. The height on the above floor level should be 6 to 8 inches, mean from 6 to 12 or from 8 to 12 centimeters maximum. Fire rated doors, we mentioned here that all fire doors are emergency exit, but not all emergency exit are fire rated doors. And during our visit, we will inspect the 3 different locations. We inspect the doors, whether can be released from magnetic lock. If it's connected to fire alarm, we will open the ceiling tiles around the wall between two compartments, smoke compartment, to make sure that firewall penetration, to make sure or to check penetration between zones, whether there is no penetration for the smoke. Like this case. Mr. Abdul Mohsen, any questions you received?
Thank you, Engineer Nawar. Very important and informative presentation. I received a lot of questions in regard of this presentation, since this presentations involve 4 of the ESRs that a lot of hospitals take care of. So let me just transfer for you one of the questions that we received, if you don't mind.
Please.
A question in regard of fire zoning. What is the fire zoning required in the hospitals, in inpatient areas and in the outpatient areas? If you can answer that.
Yeah, sure. Again, our reference is Saudi Building Code or NFPA, same. As per Saudi Building Code, they have classified hospital buildings as a class I2. I2 means the maximum fire zone should be 3,800 square meters if the patients cannot administer themselves. So 3,800 square meters. While if we have a ward or inpatient or department for psychiatric patients, for instance, that they can walk, they can be guided. So the maximum zone here will be 2,000 square meters. So there is difference between this and this. However, we have some departments in the hospital should be a dedicated or segregated independent fire zone, like kitchens, operation theater, laboratory, staircase, electrical room, mechanical room. Hopefully this is clear. Mr. Mohsen?
Yes, thank you, Engineer Nawar. This was clear. As you said, the 4 key elements that we care for are fire prevention. In this presentation, what we want you to take away while going, we want you to take away 4 main elements in order to maintain an effective live fire safety plan in your facility. We want you to prevent fires from occurring in the first place. Prohibit smoking. Segregate hazardous chemicals away from inflammable chemicals away from heating sources. Arrange your stores very well. We want you to be able to prevent the use of extension cords. Prohibit smoking, because this will increase the vulnerability and possible damage. That's the first element. The second element, have the key functions in order to discover fires by having an effective fire alarm system, distributed, well-maintained by authorized people. Third element, be able to suppress fire, either by portable first aid tools like fire extinguishers, fire blankets in the areas, or by fire hoses, sprinkler system that is distributed and having the right clean agent system in areas that requires that. Lastly, last element, have a safe way of compartment. Of course, this also compartment, not allowing fires to spread from one zone to another. This is very important. Having safe evacuation paths, the fire exits, fire escape areas, all this is very critical. Thank you for this very informative presentation, Engineer Nawar. If you have any additional points that you want to add.
No, it's okay, but I don't know whether there is a written question that we don't have time to answer, or we can do it now.
Yes, of course, we can work on the late questions that we received currently, and we can work on answering them. We hope that all answers will be available for all questions, inshallah.
Yes, hopefully. So inshallah, tomorrow, I would like to say that tomorrow we have to complete our standards, starting from FMS 25 to FMS 39, which have 2 sections. The first one is biomedical engineering, and the second one is the utility system. Right, Mr. Mohsen?
That's right, Engineer Nawar. We wish everyone, even if you have questions for today you didn't thought of or you would like to ask about it tomorrow, it's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. Tomorrow, as Engineer Nawar said, we will be covering the last two parts of our standards, which mainly covers the medical equipment and the utility management system. We have also Mr. Jamal Shaar tomorrow with us in these matters, inshallah. Thank you so much for attending. All the best for you all.
Yeah. Thank you all. Inshallah, tomorrow we can complete. Thank you all participants.